Fireman Джефрεϊ Кин believes he's the reincarnation of Civil War General John B. Gordon. A series of fascinating parallel experiences convinced Keen that this was more than mere coincidence.
So here I ended up in the hospital on my 30th birthday with pains that mimicked the worst wound that Gordon received at Antietam when he was 30 years old.
There are too many things that line up for it to be just a coincidence.
The most compelling physical evidence was a series of marks on Keen's face, arm, and leg, which correspond with battlefield scars on Gordon.
I have markings on my face in 3 places where Gordon was wounded during the Civil War. He was hit under the left eye, and it blew the right side of his face apart, under the right lighting conditions, because these are subtle. Some people call them birthmarks. I don't remember having them from birth.
You have the birthmark cases, and the cases where kids are injured. Several of your cases dealt with children being born without fingers or toes, but they had recounted that in their previous life, that's how they died. Can you give us one of those
that's
cases?
right. I mean, there are a lot of cases. Ian read a book of over 200 such cases of kids with birthmarks and birth defects that match wounds, usually the fatal wounds that the previous person experienced. So, for instance, there was a little girl who recalled the life of someone who got his fingers chopped off as he was being murdered, and then was born with very deformed fingers. There's another little boy who talked about being born in another village who had lost the fingers of his right hand in a fodder chopping machine, and then he was born, his left hand was fine, but his right hand didn't have full fingers. There's also a little girl, a case where the previous person had had skull surgery just before dying, and this girl was born with this band going around her head.
Very unusual on the back of her head. Yeah.
Very unusual, yeah.
I have seen pictures of General Gordon, and the physical similarities between Jeff and General Gordon are remarkable.
The facial resemblance between the two men could not be denied. Even a facial recognition expert found striking similarities.
The upper face as a whole, which represents the eyes and the nose, is pretty high when we compare the photograph of Джефрεϊ Кин and General Gordon.
I don't worry too much about whether the people think this happened to me, and as far as I'm concerned, it's proof to me.
There was only one way to make sure that Jeffrey was not fabricating his story and hoping to benefit from it: a polygraph exam. On the day of the test, Jeffrey appears nervous.
What's very important now, Jeffrey? What's very important? Don't try to control anything. Were you born in Connecticut?
Yes.
Regarding General Gordon, do you plan to answer each question about that truthfully?
Yes.
Did you lie in any part of that statement you initialed today?
No.
Not connected to this case, have you ever lied to make yourself look more important?
No.
Before talking to the first psychic, did you research any part of General Gordon's life?
No.
As is standard operating procedure, the test is repeated several times. How will the results match up to Jeffrey Keen's story?
I thought it went very well. I was able to reach a conclusion. The results of the polygraph test today regarding Mr. Keen is that he passed the test. He believes that in a past life he has been General Ggordon.
I don't need any proof myself anymore, and it's just evidence to put out there for other people.
Jeffrey Keen passing a polygraph alone is convincing. But then there's also the body scars and the facial similarities, which are too striking to ignore. In addition, there's Jeffrey's emotional experience on the sunken road. And the parallel events linking Keen and General Ggordon on the night of Jeffrey's 30th birthday. Combined evidence goes well beyond coincidence. For now, the case of Jeffrey Keen is proof positive.
Of course, it goes without saying that for those of you who haven't seen this, when they haven't seen it before, there's a gasp in the audience, but you all are well initiated. Edgar Cayce and myself, there's obviously a facial similarity there. This is my brother and Casey's first guy, Dr. Ketchum, who got him out there in the world. My father, after a Metallica concert, that's why he's sneering. And the Squire, Edgar Cayce's father. My father would only shop at the Squire shop, and everybody called Cayce's father the Squire. This is my best friend Jude and Edwin Blumenthal from the Cayce tradition, one of his principal investors. Jude and I did marvelous music together in high school, at least we thought so at the time. And this is my friend from college, Christopher, and his corresponding reincarnation, Morton Blumenthal. This is my good friend from college, Angelica, and this is Edgar's wife, Gertrude. These are like the only people I'm still in contact with from high school and college. I mean, you have to understand, these are not just random people from my life. These are like some of my closest associates and friends. And then when you find out that they're the same people as in Edgar's circle, it's very, very surprising. The interesting aspect of how I fit in, for those of you who haven't seen this before, is that there is a remarkable similarity between myself and the historical figure Edgar Cayce, who was a 20th century mystic and psychic, who could be given someone's name and address, and through nothing else but that information, he was able to give their medical problems and a treatment without knowing anything about them. All he knows is their name and address, and they sit down in their house, thousands of miles away, potentially. He sits down, he goes into a trance, he starts speaking, he doesn't remember anything that he says, and when he wakes up, the guy who wrote it down says, oh my gosh, this is amazing because, you know, we found out that this person has leukemia, and you said they have leukemia in your reading, and this was done over 14,000 times. So what you see here is a comparison between Casey's astrology on the inside and my astrology on the outside. And what you see here is Sun over Sun, Venus over Venus, Mars over Mars, Moon over Moon. There's all these correlations between the planets. Superficially, they're in the same sign. You can see that the probability just of hitting the same sign, Pisces, Taurus, Capricorn, year of the ox, the same year of the Chinese zodiac, 1 out of 12, and the moon in the same degree, 1 out of 360. The likelihood of all this happening by chance is really, really unusual, especially because the only time that you get this close of an alignment with Casey's birth planets, it only happens once in 127 years after he dies, which happens to be the exact time that I was born. It's a coincidence. And of course, there wouldn't be any facial similarity. That would be too obvious. So we can't give you that. You guys have probably seen this before, most of you, but obviously there's a tremendous facial similarity. You can see an extraordinary likeness. In fact, many people have said it's like the same guy, just put on a hat. And in Zurich, somebody actually gave me a bowler hat, and I recreated the famous slack-jawed pose. Now, the Casey reading said that Edgar in his past life in Atlantis was known as Ra-Ta, that he was the guy who helped design and build the Great Pyramid with the cooperation of an extraterrestrial group called Ra, and that the reason why he was able to do all these magical things like channeling and being able to find out where to build the pyramid and being able to hear the words was that he was a hybrid. His mother was impregnated by a human extraterrestrial that had white skin. They'd never seen white-skinned people on Earth before. So, Edgar Casey's past life as Ra-Ta, it says in the readings, is very controversial, was the first white man on Earth. And if that was my past life, then that means I'm your daddy.
I'm your daddy.
Thank you very much. You have to be able to laugh at yourself. I mean, it's ludicrous for me to say that I was somebody else, and I don't. All I know is that there's a facial similarity. You can't deny that, okay? You can't deny that. You can't deny that there's an astrological similarity. Those are facts. You can't deny that I also have done readings like he did, and you can't deny that I put readings online that predicted events that happened in the future that actually came true. Okay? And the Casey readings did predict that he would come back, and they said that he would be more like Ra-Ta than he was like Edgar. And Ra-Ta created a hall of records in which all the knowledge of Atlantis was put together for future races to use, for future people on Earth to use. The Hall of Records is accessed telepathically. And so what I've been doing is basically downloading the information from the Hall of Records that I knew back then and putting it together, and that's why we have information that's unlike anything else that you've seen, because it's all remembering.